welcome everybody to another Decommerce Live. And I'm Roy, one of the co-founders of Decommerce. Super excited to have Aram here with us. And what the Decommerce Live is all about is that as we're building Decommerce, we just get to meet awesome people from all around the world that are excited about all topics, community, Web3, building. And Aram is definitely one of them. I've been following his content for a long time, and it's both just super educational and also entertaining, which is a great combo. So I'm super excited to have you and alive now, Aram. And in a nutshell, very briefly, Aram Mughalian is a builder and a Web3 influencer. And I would love to welcome you and actually have you introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm a builder. I love building different Web3 products. I'm a crypto influencer. I've been in crypto since 2017 when I purchased my first Bitcoin, but I've been here full time in the last 4 years, and because I've become influencer in the last 2 years, where I started really actively posting content on LinkedIn every single day, often several times a day. And the reason for that was I realized that crypto is this blank box. Most of the people that I know who come to crypto, they don't really understand a lot. They want to learn. So my goal was to simplify crypto for the 99%. And for that reason, I started being very active on LinkedIn, because I realized Twitter, it's a good platform where you have a lot of crypto native people, but in a way, it's like a silo. It's like a place where degens buy degens and they all interact with each other. And that's great. And there's a lot of builders. But I feel like the bigger pie of people who are interested in crypto and who will come to crypto will come from non-traditional sources. And then I realized that LinkedIn is this potential source. And when I started 2 years ago, you had very few people who were talking about crypto, were interested in crypto. But since then, that has been changing a lot. And now I feel like there is a lot of people who want to learn to crypto. And then that's why I got a lot of followers. And my bet that I took 2 years ago is actually proving correct.
100%. And that's also how we got to meet. And whenever I see your posts, I also see a lot of engagement, a lot of comments, and also usually also a good group of people that just continue to engage with you. So I'd love to ask you the question of what community means to you.
Sure. The way I think about community is essentially a group of people who are passionate about a certain cause, and they come together to either try to solve a problem, or they have a hobby together or some common passion, and they come and they interact with each other. And I guess the other element of community is it's this group participation. Everybody's contributing. Some people are contributing more and other people are contributing less. But what happens is that community is also rewarding people. It's not rewarding everybody equally, but it's rewarding in an ethical and egalitarian manner, that it's not just about one individual. It's more about the community, it's about the group and the success of the overall project or the cause that they're working on. That's how I see it.
And what role has community played now in your journey?
I guess, like you can say, when you become a creator, you create your own mini community, and it's essentially people who are passionate about Web3 and then who want to learn about Web3. And then essentially every day you are just coming and sharing some valuable piece of information. And at the same time, you're also part of the other community where there are other creators. And at the same time, you're learning from other creators. So it's this kind of informal group of people that are, and their followers that are, you're sharing content, you're supporting each other. And your overall goal is to make Web3 relevant, make it easy for people to understand, and I guess just bring more people into the Web3 space. So from my experience, this has been the community, but I've also been at different points a member of different DAOs that I was interested in, or I have been, let's say, looking from the side at different communities, which, for example, like Ethereum or Solana or like Bitcoin, these are also communities, and you can argue these were some of the most original communities right how the Web3 started. So while I haven't really been active builder in Ethereum or Bitcoin, and like the foundations work behind these communities are a bit more technical, but I've been kind of onlooker, and I was trying to see what are the new things that are planning to do, and then just try to explain it to my audience in a simple way that they would understand. For example, every time Ethereum would have a new upgrade, I would explain like, okay, this is what it means. For example, I wouldn't go into like all these technical number details, but I would explain it to them in a way that they would understand.
And that's what I love about the shares that you do and how you engage is, I feel like, yes, you talk about crypto, and I feel like a lot of new creators in the space are very either price driven or maybe cycle or hype cycle driven. And I feel like you really care about the technology and more in the wider sense, the movement behind it. Can you share a bit more about why you care about it?
I mean, for me, it's simple. I fundamentally believe that crypto equals freedom. We have had a lot of different revolutions or evolutions throughout history, right? If you look at, I don't know, throughout history, like people didn't have freedom. For every time you gained something, you had to fight for it. It wasn't really just given because king or the ruler wanted, okay, I'm just going to make my subjects free people. No, you had to fight. There were so many wars, there were so many revolutions, right? And then we kind of started building these democratic societies, etc. I think the progress doesn't stop there, right? We still, a lot of areas where some entities have pretty much absolute monopoly. For example, banks have an absolute monopoly in financial transactions. If you want to transact, if you want to send money, you can't just pick up the cash or gold and then just go overseas. There's strict limits how much cash you can move with you, etc., right? And a lot of times banks rely on technologies that are, built in 60s and 70s. And if you look at the languages like this, that the banking infrastructure works on, they're like really, really ancient and they're really old. And there aren't many developers even left around who are proficient in these languages. Another example is the governments, they have absolute monopoly on printing money. And when we're talking about fiat currency, like pretty much there was a time when in principle fiat currencies had a limit because they were pegged to gold. Then famously in 71, Nixon removed this gold peg, and now essentially fiat it's just a floating currency, and it says you trust the government. And we have seen some governments who were incompetent. They basically had hyperinflations. There's many examples from Venezuela to Lebanon to we had in Zimbabwe, etc. Right? When government has a monopoly and then they abuse this monopoly, they start printing out way too much money, and then it's just really causing a lot of suffering and economic difficulties. So I think crypto in this space is a disruptor. For example, if you look at Bitcoin, there's a limited cap. It's a permissionless environment. Everybody can send money to everybody, and you can transact without relying on these centralized intermediaries. And it's also a good sort of value. If you believe in this digital asset, you can make investment. And then if you invest it a few years ago, you've probably been doing very well. So this is the core reason why I'm in Web3, because I fundamentally believe that this new technology is going to give people more power, more autonomy, and it's also going to make things more efficient. So we don't have to rely on these huge banks who charge a lot of fees, and then there's all these intermediary banks, etc. So this is my why.
And I really love that. And I know from our previous conversation that this is a really important part to you as well with the financial part, the banking systems and independence there. Also feel like you have a view and you care about when you think about more on the data side. So if we take that analogy from the finance side that you mentioned now with the banks, how do you see that with the centralized versus decentralized world at the moment and going forward?
First of all, we have to remember that every project that we have in crypto was largely built by a decentralized community. There are different models. I think the Bitcoin, if you see like how it started, it was just an anonymous person sending out this white paper to some cryptography email list, and then some early adopters started coming around, and then they started building. And then like a couple of years later, Satoshi left, and then other people took over and they started building. So there was no absolute leader, and it was built in a decentralized way, and no single person's opinion prevailed. And that's why Bitcoin is decentralized, and I think that's why it's censorship resistant. If you look at Ethereum, like in the early days, there were some co-founders in Ethereum who essentially wanted to make it more for profit and more centralized, and like Vitalik was against that. And in the early days, there were a lot of fights in Ethereum, but ultimately Ethereum became what it is, which is like a decentralized computer, because Bitcoin is more like a decentralized digital asset. So I think one key aspect of that community is that you may have a leader like Vitalik. Vitalik is the leader, right? But even if you look at his ownership of the total Ethereum supply, it's just, he still has hundreds of millions, but as an overall market cap, it's like 1% or probably even less than 1%, right? On the other hand, if you look at, let's say, large centralized companies, and these companies may be run very efficiently, but it's a fact that it's just one man's decision quite often. If you look at all the big tech from the Microsoft, it's still the founders and the CEOs, they have most control. Or even like if you look at Meta or Facebook, the founder, Mark Zuckerberg, he may not have I don't remember how much ownership he has, but he has absolute control. So there is these existing tools. Even though if you're a minority owner, you can still have absolute control over the company's decision making. And essentially, whatever he says is the law. On the other hand, in decentralized communities, it's the code is the law, and the code has been agreed by a large number of people, and it's more neutral and it's censorship resistant. So again, if you just compare these two things, I think you can see that decentralized communities build more decentralized products, and centralized organizations build more centralized products, and they almost always have some sort of a kill switch, or they can reverse their decisions, basically do whatever they want to do.
And then, so let's take a moment and talk about the current state of Web3 crypto communities, and let's say the different platforms and tools, and how decentralized versus centralized is it really at the moment? What's your take on that?
So there's two things. Let's just separate them. One is how your community operates, and then the second is what kind of tools you use, right? And they're a little bit different because if you look, for example, if you look at Bitcoin or Ethereum, I think they're fairly decentralized communities. And I think during the Bitcoin times, it was like some centralized forums. So there are some communities which are decentralized, but I think that, and there are some communities which are very centralized, right? So this is one distinction. But what I think what all communities, almost all communities, not all, but most of them, what they have in common is they're relying on centralized tools. And I think for many of them, that can be a problem. Now, for example, let's look at what are the top tools, right? So on the first place, we have X or Twitter. And it's basically since Elon Musk took over, it's one-man company. He fired like people. And as a company, he basically does whatever he wants. It's not even a public company, it's a private company. So he has even more control. So he is not really accountable to the public, to the shareholders, nobody. He does whatever he wants. Then you look at Telegram. And then what happened in Telegram? Telegram has been this centralized company. And I think Pavel Durov, the founder and the CEO of Telegram, he said it's a very small team for the people. It's very good from the point of being like a small and efficient team, and probably from the perspective of being profitable. But it means that if you're one CEO and then he has absolute control and ownership of Telegram, that means you become a centralized point of failure. And you see what happened. Like he's been arrested in France, and it means potentially it's very easy to put pressure on a CEO of a centralized company and then try to push it to make sessions. So you see Twitter, now we have the Telegram. And then you look at Discord, another centralized entity, which to be honest, I don't really like. I mean, Telegram, you can still argue its UI UX is okay. And then Twitter is also okay. They're centralized, but Discord is not only centralized tool, but it has a lot of bots and there's a lot of scammers. I think the UI UX is primarily for gamers and gamers love that. But I think it's not the best fit for crypto community. But for some reason, Discord is this default tool where most of the community discussions are happening. So again, to summarize, if you look at these top three tools like Twitter, Telegram, Discord, they probably comprise like 90% of the tools that these communities use, but all of them are centralized. And this is the irony that we want to build centralized communities on decentralized tools, yet we just end up using extremely centralized tools, many of which are run by just one person CEOs. Essentially, whatever the CEO says becomes the law. So it's less than an ideal situation. Let's put it that way.
It's a super interesting point. So we have a great group of people that really subscribe and drive this idea of decentralization, but then somehow accept or like the centralization of data in the end. Why do you think that is? Is there a reason, or it just happened the way it is right now?
There's a reason why these platforms are centralized.
That why people are okay that the data is centralized in one place?
Look, one thing that we have to understand is that in nature, things tend to centralize. If you look at the history, it's always the kings that try to conquer, that try to centralize. So if you want to keep things decentralized, it's really, really hard. It's not easy. So the default mode is centralized. Now, when you say, well, I think that the main reason is historical reason, because all these tools, for example, Twitter was started before Bitcoin came around. So it was kind of like the most libertarian platform you can say of all the existing ones. So naturally people moved there. Now, Telegram was started after Bitcoin came around, but I think among all the messaging apps, it probably was the one that was giving the most flexibility. And then it had these encryption features. Yes, it's centralized, but it has some encryption features, right? So again, naturally people gravitated to that. And then because they were the tools that were, let's just say they had early mover advantage, they just ended up accumulating people. And the most important thing, and the same I guess is true for Discord, right? It was started in 2010s, and again, first it was for gamers, and then a lot of these first early crypto communities came, and then it just became the default tool. And now, why it's really hard to move away from them is because of the network effects. You may have another tool which is decentralized, which is better, but these network effects are extremely, extremely strong. And the explanation is very simple. If 99 of your friends are, I don't know, let's say they're using Twitter, and then you tell them, hey, there's this new decentralized version of Twitter. It's actually decentralized protocol where you want your followers and data, etc. It's called Farcaster. You want to move there? A lot of people are not willing to move because they're like, yeah, I'm just going to be alone on all my connections are here, right? So it's very hard, this early stage, it's very hard to persuade people to move. Having said that, I'm being optimistic. And for example, I've mentioned Farcaster already, right? It's basically a protocol. You can think of it as decentralized version of Twitter where your data is stored on a protocol and then there can be different clients. So it's very similar to email because email is also a protocol. So no single entity controls email. That's why you can, I don't know, Gmail blocks you can go to Microsoft blocks you can go to somebody else, but you will still have access to email. The same way works for Farcaster, right? And I've noticed that some very, let's just say, famous people in crypto, for example, Vitalik, he moved to Farcaster and he's been very active there. And that move kind of prompted a lot of early adopters, including me, to also move to Farcaster. And I think it's a good platform. But again, if I compare it to LinkedIn or X, etc., it has less than 1 million users, which is like a drop in an ocean compared to hundreds of millions that Twitter has, like a billion plus that I think LinkedIn has, right? So long story short, I think it's historical reasons that we started with centralized platforms, and it's the network effects that still keep people on decentralized platforms. But I remain optimistic that maybe, I don't know, in a few years, we'll have more people using different types of decentralized tools. And these types of incidents that happened with Telegram CEO Pavel Durov, maybe it will be an extra, I don't know, incentive for some people to say, okay, you know what, maybe I should start using decentralized tools because it gives me more freedom or autonomy.
So what's your wish for the future of communities, looking at Web3 communities for the next few years? Let's say, how would you like it to be in a few years' time?
I wish people start using different tools which are more decentralized, which give them more ownership of their data. I wish also people build more communities which are decentralized in nature, and just build communities that are more, that reward their community members for their contributions. Because one thing that I see is that, let's say when you do like your tokenomics or the airdrops, etc., right? It's always, not always, but quite often it's a small number of insiders that gain a lot of upside and a lot of contributors that are just not getting enough rewards. And as a result of them, a lot of them just get demotivated and leave this community. So I think people will realize that if you want to build a strong community and if you want to retain people, you have to make them feel appreciated and you have to reward them accordingly to their contributions. Because I think this is really important. People have to feel that they are part of the community and they own part of the community. It's not just, hey, we're just a community. In reality, it's just like a few insiders around the show.
Yeah, that's super important. I mean, when we're building up Tibo, our D2C brand, we built that on third-party platforms, the usuals, the Instagrams of the world. And people were engaging with us. And the only thing we could really do is thank you. That was it. We could like their comment or maybe even comment back or something like that. But that's nice if somebody just comments once. But if somebody's really involved in shaping the community, in making a better product, whatever it might be that they contribute, we felt like we really wanted to reward these people in an automated way and to build that relationship, not to go through an algorithm, which it was on Instagram, for example, but to be really able to own that relationship directly and find an automated way to reward them for their contributions. And that's what really brought us to build what is now Decommerce as a white label solution for others. And I'd love for you as an influencer, as a creator, to hear from your view how, when you see those interactions from people on your posts, on your engagements, what do you feel like? How would you like to reward them? Like, how would you like to make them more involved if you had any and all tools in the world at your fingertips?
One thing that I see is that a lot of people ask me how I got started, because I see that more and more people are becoming active on LinkedIn, and the perception that LinkedIn was this website where you just go when you were looking for a job is changing. It's much more of a social network now. So a lot of people are trying to see how to get started, how to start posting content, etc. So a lot of them just reach out to me, they comment or reach out to me in the DMs, right? So this is something that I've been sharing consistently, tips like how to get started. This is one thing. The other thing is that the creators who are just getting started, it's really important to just kind of give them some support, maybe engage with their posts, just give them some advice, etc. And I noticed because when I was getting started, I had like very few followers and it was really hard, especially when you're a big creator. There is a point when, I don't want to give any specific number, but there's a point when you reach your growth kind of accelerates because you already, it's this again, network effects that kick in. Yeah. Only in this case, I think it's a good thing. And then your growth kind of accelerates, right? But when you have very few followers, it's very hard to do this 0-to-1 journey. And I think when I see someone who's really doing good contributions, and I just try my best to support these creators. And for other people, they're not really looking to become creators, but they're like, hey, I want, for example, I love the memes that you share, or I love these breakdowns, the news, the insights that you share. So just keep doing that. And sometimes people would come and say, hey, can you just cover this topic? I'm interested about this. And then, I would just go think about it and then just come and do more deep dives about these topics. So this is one way I try to engage with them. stuff. Now, some creators, I haven't done that yet, but maybe I will at some point. Some creators say, I want to have more closer interaction with my communities. How do you do that? So they start a newsletter, for example, right? And again, we go back to email. And I think email is this decentralized tool that is not part of Web3, but has a lot of the properties and that a lot of Web3 products have. And that's why people love it, because it's very easy to just move your subscriber list from one email provider to another and happen, right? So I think one way to do it is that. Another way is, for example, to also ask your followers to join you on another decentralized platform where you actually own your followers, because it's also a protocol like email. Like I talked about Forecaster. I've invited some people who wanted to try it out. I think in terms of the UI, UX, it's getting a lot better, because I remember like the first version when I joined, I needed to have a wallet, and then that wallet was kind of access to my account, etc. But now like the process has gotten a lot better. So I feel like now there are more people who are joining Forecaster. So basically, yeah, those are the few things you can do. You can support them in their journey. You can share your journey. You can be transparent, vulnerable. And if you want, you can also try to encourage your followers to join your email list or join, follow you on other decentralized platforms.
So really being authentic and providing value to people that join your journey. And what are the strategies that you share sometimes when people ask you how to get started?
I guess one thing is, again, I've briefly covered it. 0 to 1 journey is much harder than 1 to 2. So it's okay to start and then make posts, not get likes, not get any comments. And a lot of people just get disappointed after a week or two, they just quit. But you have to understand that you have to stay consistent for at least few months, and then you will start seeing the first results, right? For some people, that happens faster. For other people, it happens a bit more slowly, but everybody has their journey. So just don't compare yourself other people, right? Everybody. Again, like different niches. If you talk about if you talk only about how to grow your LinkedIn, probably you're going to get a lot of following very fast. If you talk about a more niche topic like crypto, you probably will grow a bit more slowly, because again, crypto is still a niche like globally. So if you have like 8 billion people, so it's less than 10% of the global population, right? That owns crypto. So it's still a niche topic, and you have to realize that. But first thing is you have to stay consistent for at least a minimum period of time. The second thing is you have to learn and iterate as you go. Like your first post is not going to be good, but if you keep doing that for 100 days and you learn a little bit every day from other creators, from the advice they share with you, I think after 100 days, you'll be like pretty good. Other thing is that I think it's not only just asking, it's also sharing. So it's not just you make a post and then you expect people to come and like, you're also going to try to contribute for their posts, right? So it's kind of becomes more like, hey, I love your content. And it's not about being in a pod, which I'm against. It's more like finding people whose content resonates with you and you like it because you genuinely like their posts. And then if it's mutual, they will come and then they will like you. So it becomes this sort of synergy. Yeah. And then I guess you mentioned that like you really have to be authentic and that's sometimes even vulnerable, because I see it quite a lot of times people come on LinkedIn, they're like, oh, I closed this deal, I made 1 million, I have this. They only show their success. People are like, wow, it's not genuine. People are smart. They will be able to tell that if you only talk about these things, you can't just be authentic. I would rather have some people who share their successes and their failures. And the reason they share their failures, they say, I did X and Y happened. And here are the 3 things that I learned. So actually, you don't have to make the same mistake again. You can just go and learn from the lessons of other people. And this is something that a lot of them will appreciate a lot, because none of us is perfect. People who don't talk about their failures or vulnerabilities are just not being authentic, because every single one of us has failure at some point in their life, right? So that's why I think the 4th point, being authentic, is also very important.
Love it. That's a stark reminder. And as we're coming up on time, I wanted to ask you the last question. I'm curious what your answer is. If you could pick between 2 things, either an additional 100,000 followers on the platform of your choosing, or 1,000 superfans that are true superfans on a decentralized space where you own the relationship and the insights and you can reward people, which one would you pick and why?
I think I would go for quality over quantity. Again, I mean, you may have, I have like 50,000 followers roughly, right? You can see that it's always the small number of people that are really interested in your content, that support you, etc., right? So it's not like every time you make a post, all 50,000 of them come and make a comment. No, it's always a small number of people. And then I don't know what is this ratio, like it really again differs from creator to creator, but I'd rather have a small number of supporters, because with 1,000 such supporters, you can probably just grow to 100K much faster than if you had 100K kind of generic audience who maybe cares, maybe doesn't care about you. So again, I've seen profiles which are 10 times bigger than me. for example, right? And I know a lot of them are either bots or what I call like non-engaged people. And when they make a post, for example, they don't really get a lot of engagement. And I see profiles on that end which are, for example, smaller than me, but they're getting more engagement because quality is higher. So it's actually about the concentration of people who care about your content. So yeah, I mean, for me, the choice is very clear. I would always go for quality than just quantity. I think just quantity, it's a vanity metric. I don't really follow, like a lot of people just go, oh, I have X number of followers, but I ask them, so what? If you really have for example, a service or a product and you have X number of followers, see how many of them are actually converting. If you have 1,000 followers who care about your product, probably a large percentage of them will become paying customers and you'll be generating decent revenue. But if you have 100,000 followers and none of them cares about your product, probably like very few many will convert and you will have almost like no sales. So again, I don't look at vanity metrics and I look at the quality.
Aram, thank you so much for sharing all the insights. We're already up on time. Time flew by. Thank you so much. And where can people find you?
I think the best place to find is on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Aram Mughalian, and I'm very active there. My messages are open. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me.
Amazing. Thanks, Aram. And for everybody listening, next week we'll be back and diving deeper into the fashion space. All right?
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.